Okay, we're going to get started. So welcome to your next educational track session. My name is Allison Graylis with Women in Manufacturing Association. We're pleased to introduce and welcome Ashlee Breitner. She is Associate Director, University of Michigan for the Economic Growth Institute. Ashlee will be discussing with us today, driving equity in decision making. Please help me in welcoming Ashlee.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to see you all here today. I know we're getting late in the day, so hopefully this session is going to keep you awake. We've got a couple of fun interactive things we're going to try to do throughout the session today, so bear with me. I want to start off by talking today, though, about women making decisions. And I see a few men in the room, which is great and wonderful. So think about this in the context of anyone making decisions. We're constantly making decisions in our environment, whether it's in our careers, in our extracurricular activities, and just our day-to-day environment, right? But when you ask yourself the question at the end of the day, when you make a decision or a set of decisions, did you really make those decisions in the most equitable way possible? Were you inclusive of all possible solutions? And really, at the end of the day, was the best possible decision made for your group, for yourself, whoever it is that decision's being made on behalf of. So today, I'm going to teach you a little bit about a methodology that our organization has worked here over the last few years to really prove effective in driving equitable decision making. So removing the bias, a lot of that unconscious bias that comes into our decision making processes, driving consistency, consensus, and we'll get into some of those details about the value in this process that we use today. Before we get started, though, as mentioned, I am Ashlee Breitner from that state up north at the University of Michigan's Economic Growth Institute. There, I manage operations across all of the programs that our institute administers to drive equitable economic growth. That's our mission, equitable economic growth. And we typically are doing that through supporting small to medium-sized manufacturers and then also the communities in which they reside. So if you have a mobile phone in front of you or a laptop, if you've got it out, great. Do me a quick favor. Either scan the QR code up there or go to slido.com. This is a pretty fun, simple activity. And what I want you to do is, we'll preface that with, as a man or a woman, what do you find yourself making decisions on? I want to get us all thinking about decision making for this session. Gut, that's a good one. We're going to talk about that today. Strategy. Others' opinions, that's great. Or others on behalf of others. Dinner. I can't tell you how many times at the end of the day I get done working and my husband says, "What's for dinner?" And I say, "I have made too many decisions today. You just figure that one out for me." I like that. So as you can see, the decisions we all make are broad, right? From day-to-day tactical things we have to do to stay alive, like dinner, to big overarching concepts. The larger the word is on the word cloud here, the more prominent it is from all of you who have submitted it. So budget comes up a lot, operations, hiring, spending. The list goes on and on, right? Decisions never end. Okay. So next question for you, still also in Slido there. What are your pain points in making decisions? What do you cringe about when you have to make those decisions? Or what gives you anxiety before you're going to start going through a decision-making process? Lack of data, that's for sure. Budget, resources, and money. Failure, accuracy, lots of good things. Great, awesome, everyone. There's a lot of pain points in decision making. And so we're going to talk through the model that we use, the process that we've driven to work and prove effective here today to hopefully mitigate some of these pain points. I don't know that they'll all go away in any process, but just look at the overabundant amount of pain points that we work through in decision making. So next, I want you to think about this from a career perspective for a minute. We make lots of decisions, as we saw a lot of them in our personal lives, but let's talk about decisions made in our professional lives for a second. So how often do you find yourself in your career asking, you make a decision, your team makes a decision, and then you ask yourself, did that align with our strategy? That is, even if we had a strategy, right? Some organizations don't have a detailed strategy. This came up already in our pain points. Do we have the right resources to actually execute that decision we just made? Is it the best choice? There's millions of choices out there of decisions or processes we can take. Was it the best optimal portfolio of decisions we made? Financial performance, is the ROI going to be there at the end of the day? And fiscal responsibility, do we even have the money to execute the decision? So if you ask yourself those questions in your organization, as you make decisions, as you set plans, unfortunately or fortunately, you're not alone. 20% of organizations, only 20% of organizations feel that they make good decisions. Tough, right? And 72% of organizations feel they're just as likely to make a good decision as they are a bad decision. So not an ideal situation, right? But then we ask ourselves even another layer on top of that. Are the decisions we made in our organization done so in a way that was unbiased and is truly in the best interest of everybody involved in the process and involved in the outcomes of whatever decision we made? That adds a whole nother layer of complexity, right? So historically, what's wrong with decision making? Typically, decisions are made very ad hoc. Gut reaction, shoot from the hip, whatever sounds best at that time. We make a lot of decisions that way in our day-to-day. Emotional. How many of you, like myself, have used the 24-hour rule in making decisions, right? We take that pause, we try to take that pause, let our emotions calm down before we move forward with something. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of decisions are made very emotional based. Bias, this one's my favorite, and we're going to talk a lot about this today. How often have you been sitting in a room with a team, and just because that person in the back corner is the loudest or most dominant, somehow we always end up following their decision, right? They drive the decision in the conversation. Is it always the best one? Probably not, maybe not. Inconsistent decisions. Today we make a decision, 6 months from now, we're asking ourselves a similar question, and it's very, the decision we make there is very inconsistent with what we chose 6 months ago. And last but not least, I won't get into this one too much, but we all know politics are involved in decisions every day. So over the last few years, the Economic Growth Institute at the University of Michigan has worked with a company called Allovance to really help drive organizations and individuals in making better decisions. So we're going to go through a process today that removes the unconscious bias that we talked about or in a lot of our decisions. It reduces the uncertainty in some of the decisions we make, but at the same time, the process is consistent, structured, but incredibly flexible, because we know we can make a decision today. Excuse me, we can set a strategic plan, whatever it may be. And then in a week from now, in a month from now, when a pandemic hits, things change, right? And we need to be able to be flexible in our decision-making process. So my team is actually trained in this method that I'm going to walk you through today and talk a little bit more about here in a second. So to give you a just real quick high-level overview about the process, and we're actually going to get to go through a quick model today, so I can show you how this process works to drive consensus and remove bias. I'm going to show you a quick video, so bear with me. It's about 2 minutes, but hopefully this will set the stage.
Strategic or capital planning is a headache. And while Ashlee knows these are essential exercises, she also dreads the time wasted on budget cuts, emotional team meetings, departmental bias, and forests of spreadsheets. But what if there was a better way? What if Ashlee could work together with the strategic team or her client's strategic team in an organized manner to create an objective, scientifically proven, data-backed, and repeatable strategic or capital planning model. One that guarantees a strategic plan that is 100% aligned with the strategic priorities of the organization or initiative. Now she can. As an Allovance certified decision coach, Ashlee is able to set up a strategic or capital planning model and manage the entire process conveniently in one place. It all starts with Ashlee inviting the strategic team, those individuals who are essential to achieving the organization's strategic priorities. The team then works together to develop a baseline for the entire plan, a strategic value scorecard. The scorecard is comprised of top-level priorities broken down into actionable objectives, each with its own relative weight. Strategic priorities, such as organizational excellence, with objectives like managing human capital, creating a continuous improvement culture, and increasing employee engagement. With the scorecard completed, Ashlee can now collaborate with various subject matter experts to create metrics for each objective to measure success without bias. Ashlee then emails project owners who will log in and submit projects. As projects are entered, the impact of each project is evaluated and scored against the strategic value scorecard. With all of the projects scored, Ashlee can build the strategic or capital plan based on each project's alignment with the strategic values and see the impact of the plan in real time. This means that she can now complete the strategic or capital plan in weeks instead of months and generate a professional report at the push of a button. Now Ashlee is able to align projects to the overall strategy, involve the entire team in the capital or strategic planning process, leverage data to ensure acceptance and justification, provide transparency throughout the process, and maintain peace within the organization.
Okay. So in the context of the video, it talks a lot about making decisions relative to strategic planning and capital planning. That's where we focus a lot of our energy, but the process we're going to go through today and the methodology I'm going to explain to you can be used to make any decision. At the end of the day, decisions are complex, right? And we need to figure out a way to sort through them in a way that is consensus driven and removes that bias from the process. So it's a 5-step process we're going to go through. You just heard it described very quickly. We break it down into 5 steps: strategize, compare, quantify, score, and select. And in the next 30 minutes, we're going to get through all 5 of those. So you're going to hear me say, for the sake of time, a lot in this presentation. Usually this takes us a couple days to get through this with the group, right? But you can also make a small decision, and that's what I want to show you today, how we move through the process and some of the value in it. Before we start any decision making though, the foundation for what we do are these 4 participatory values in driving equitable decision making. We want to make sure there's full participation. So feel free to throw your ideas out there, as crazy as they may be or as wonderful as they may be. A mutual understanding. So we want to make sure that everyone understands that we all have different goals at the end of the day and whatever decision it is we're trying to make, or whatever plan we're trying to establish. Inclusive solutions. So we want everybody's perspectives heard, and we want to impart the value in the balance of power. So you'll see some ways in which we go through the process to do some checks and balances to make sure that we truly have that balance of power in the final plan. And then shared responsibility. Whatever we decide in terms of our final plan, we all have to then execute it, right? So we have to have shared responsibility for what it was that we decided at the end of the day. When we look at decision making, we look at it through 3 lenses. For sake of today, we're going to really focus just on that first lens of strategic value. Strategic value is, how does the decision align with what we all as a team decided were the priorities and objectives of what's important to us as an organization in making this decision? Complexity, lots of our decisions, some of them are low complexity and some of them have high complexity. A lot of times complexity comes into play when there's lots of partners involved, funding sources, lots of different factors can be criteria for complexity. And the other lens that we look at decisions through is urgency. Sometimes urgency, certain elements of urgency really elevate our decisions to be made. Regulatory issues, safety issues, usually that's what we hear come through in a sense of urgency with a lot of the companies and in manufacturing companies that we work with. So we're going to jump into a model here. The best way to understand this methodology is to do it. So we're going to actually walk through a scenario here. You're going to see as a coach what I run behind the scenes today to facilitate this discussion. And I'll hit on some points as to how we're removing the bias and how we are driving those equitable principles. So today I want you all to pretend we are part of the Women in Manufacturing organization. And we need to purchase a new vehicle for our organization. Our team members use this vehicle to visit their clients and go on client trips, right? So we need to purchase a new car. So what I've done here is created a model called Women in Manufacturing Car. And to set us up, typically this part of the process takes a while. Whenever we're establishing something that we're making a decision on, we have to start with the goal. What are we trying to achieve? High level goal, what is it we're trying to accomplish? This one I've pre-populated for us just again for the sake of time. Our goal with this model is to purchase a vehicle for our women in manufacturing team members to utilize for client visits. Not too complicated, right? When you're talking about a complex organization though, or a complex manufacturing company, sometimes that goal gets really meaty and it takes a lot of conversation amongst the strategic team members we pull together to really define what our goal is of what we're trying to decide. So from there, we're in the strategize step right now, you can see. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the framework for this decision together. So we start at a high level and we call them strategic priorities. So when it comes to purchasing this car, what do you think are our high level priorities? What's important when it comes to deciding which car we're going to buy? Any thoughts? Safety. Oops. Okay, environmental. Okay, and cost. And so for the sake of this model today, so we can actually get through the whole thing, I'm going to limit us to 3 priorities. Let's see here. Actually, cost, I'm going to show you something in just a second. So give me one more. Efficiency. Okay, so we have 3 priorities for this car. Typically, we keep priorities from 5 to 7 total. Anything more than that gets pretty complex, but in general, we can bucket our priorities, high level concepts into 5 to 7 priorities. So we have safety, environmental, and efficiency. Those are the most important things when it comes to purchasing this car for our team today. So next, what we do is we drill down to the next level. So we try to define this a little bit further. So when it comes to safety, what are some objectives that are important for us relative to safety of this vehicle? Crash rating, okay. Anything else? Gas mileage, would that be efficiency, safety? We can add that one in over here. Okay. Any other objectives with safety or efficiency? What about, let's see here. I know we've got some automotive people in the room here for safety. Blind side detectors, that's a good one. Do we want to call it features, specific features? Because we're going to break it down into some of those things you just listed off. So don't forget those. Did I hear recalls? Okay. Okay. And then I'm just going to jump over. Usually we go through and we try to exhaust these. Again, 5 to 7 objectives can be typical. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there's none. It's just the high level priority concept. So what about environmental? Is there a particular objective with environmental we want to look at here? Emissions. Okay. Fuel type, that's what I was looking for. Thanks. Okay. So I think we will build that into our fuel type criteria. So what I'm gonna just pause us there. So like I said, in a normal scenario, we go through and exhaust objectives under each one of these, but I'm just gonna keep us moving for sake of time. Let's say this is our strategic value scorecard, as we call it. So we have 3 priorities, and underneath each of those, we have anywhere from 1 to 3 particular objectives with each of them. So this is the part, this is the most critical part in the process, because if we don't establish this framework right for what it is we're trying to make the decision on, everything goes out the window, right? So this is the part where we really work as coaches to pull that conversation out of people. So you said efficiency, what does that mean to you? And that's where we start to drill out those objectives, each one at a time. What we do then is we actually go into the step called quantify. So the quantify step, what that does is now we're going to set some criteria behind each one of these elements. So we'll do a couple together and then I'll populate a few. So for example, for recalls, we have up at the top of the screen, we're working on recalls now. We want to say, what is that for this car? What is high desirability for recalls? So we scale it based on high, medium, and low desirability. Sometimes it's qualitative, sometimes it's quantitative. It just depends on what the objective is we're looking at. So when it comes to recalls, what's a highly desirable metric for recalls? 0. I was hoping that's what you'd say. Okay, 0. So medium desirability would be 1. And low desirability is anything more than 2. Sound good? Okay, let's look at, okay, so specific features. I heard a bunch of things thrown out. And again, this is related to safety is our priority. So safety is our priority. Our objective is specific features. So what is most desirable for safety features? Seatbelts. Seatbelts and what else? Airbags. Anything else that's critical? Okay, got it. We are a creative group today. Okay, so typically we scale these down. I usually start either at high or I start at low if low is a little easier to achieve. So the way I would scale this down for right now, for sake of time, medium desirability is just seat belts and airbags. We don't have brakes. Okay. And then from there, we only have seat belts. We don't have anything else. So, I think hopefully you get my point here. What we're doing is we're working to set criteria as to what defines something as desirable within our organization based on the decision we're trying to make right now. So let's see here, crash rating. I have no idea how crash rating numbers work. Can somebody give me a high desirability crash rating? 5 stars. Thank you. 4 stars, 3 stars. So I'm just plugging things in to get us moving along, but this part of the process, usually with a larger organization when we're working through it, or with a larger team, what we do is I don't actually facilitate a discussion like this. What I do is I say, hey, strategic team, who's my expert in crash ratings in this group? And then I meet with them as an individual and they help me to define what this criteria looks like. Because not everybody's an expert in our organization on crash ratings, right? So I work with experts individually to define this criteria. And then let me just plug in some other ones here. So fuel type, high desirability. Did I hear electric? What was that? Got it. No, I'm spelling that wrong. IEL. Got it. Thanks. I'll blame it on moving quickly. Okay, low emissions. What's high desirability there? 0%. Did I hear that? Okay. Medium. 10%. And low. Anything greater? Okay. And let's see here. Gas mileage, we want this thing to high desirability, 35 plus, 30 to 35. Oops. And then lower than 30. Okay. And we also have, okay. So what we've done is we've established criteria for all of those objectives we set together, right? This process usually takes much longer, but one of the things we're not going to do just for the sake of time, but we also go and through and set desirability criteria for complexity and urgency. So what defines an urgent purchase, an urgent decision in our organization, or what defines a complex one? In this particular case, the simple car scenario, complexity and urgency isn't a huge deal, but when you're thinking about a strategic plan, you can imagine how a lot of your decisions ride on complexity and urgency. Okay, so now we have our scorecard set, and what we're gonna do, this part of the process is usually the fun part. So as a coach, this is what I see behind the scenes. I don't want you to focus though on the numbers, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to go through an activity. So you're going to have to bear with me because I don't have enough screens here to make this work the way I normally do. But in a normal setting, you would only see this as part of my team that I'm working with. So when we look at priorities and objectives in our organization, they're not all weighted equal, right? Sometimes things are elevated much higher than others in terms of those priorities and those objectives. So what we're going to do now is go through an activity to actually set weights behind, is this one more important than this one? So if you focus just on this side of the screen for me, give me 1 second. I'm going to minimize things. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. Take a look at these two, if you can, for me. I apologize. Well, I lost that one. Come back. Come back to me now. Okay. That's okay. We'll make it work like this. So, okay. So we're going to pair two of our priorities together against each other right now. So safety and environmental. When it comes to purchasing this vehicle, which one do you think should be more important? Which one gets more weight? Safety. Safety usually always is higher for everything, hopefully. So tell me how much. Is it a little bit higher? Is it a lot more important? A lot? That much? Seem right? Okay. And then what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to get general consensus. I don't want you to focus on the numbers that I can see. That drives the algorithms behind what we're going to look at in a minute. I just want general consensus. So next, we have safety and efficiency. Safety again, the same amount. Okay, right about there. And then we have environmental inefficiency. Which one's more important? Efficiency. That much? More? Less? Less. Okay. Okay. Sound good? Okay. Okay, so then we work through the same thing at the objective level. So we'll do two together and then I'll go through and just weight the other ones for sake of time. But now we're looking at recalls versus those specific safety features. Which one's more important? The features, the here and now? Anyone disagree? Somebody's going to rebuttal it. No? We don't have enough energy. What this part of the process does is it drives a lot of conversation. And usually, it's fairly good conversation. Sometimes it gets pretty heated. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is just get general consensus as to those relative weights. So specific features, right about there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug through and set some criteria for these other ones. But we would always go through and do this together as a team to decide what carries more weight in our organization in particular. Okay. So now we have the compare step complete. So what we're going to do now is we're going to flip back to this scorecard that we worked on together. And what I can tell you now, first thing I look at actually is in the top right-hand corner, you'll see here. So sometimes when you don't work through these, it shows you, what this is showing me is inconsistency of our decisions, right? So relative to our priorities, 5% is pretty good. We were pretty consistent in what we said was important. Because I just skewed them all over the place, safety, we have a really bad inconsistency ratio. So if that ever happened when I was working with a team, I'd go back and say, okay, we need to have conversations. We're not being consistent in what we're saying is important over other things. We need to rethink what those weights are. For today, I'm not going to work through that, but environmental, we were at 0. So we're doing awesome there. So I check that first, and then we look at what matters to us. So if you look now and you see these little bubbles or circles in the corner of each priority and objective, safety is our first priority. It's our most heavily weighted at 72%. Down from there is efficiency at 18 and environmental at 10. So that tells us that safety is heavily weighted in the decision we're going to make here. You can also look downwards and see them relative to the objectives we set. So for example, with environmental, our low emissions objective was set at 84% of the weight of what matters to us when it comes to the environmental priority for this car. Fuel type was only 16%. Okay. So what this does is it sets those relative weights, what matters to our organization, kind of behind the scenes, so that when we start putting ideas and we start putting cars into this model, it factors in what's important relative to these individual vehicles we're going to submit. Okay, so my team is awesome, and they're back in Ann Arbor online right now submitting cars for the model that we just created. So hopefully this goes as planned. We'll see. But we're going to do one together. So what we do is, you saw in the video, but what I can do is send out an email to anyone. Anyone that's a project owner. So this is somebody where I want their idea. I want their opinion of what they think we should do in our organization. I send them this quick email. You'll see mine. I have my unique link. I go to if all works well. Okay, and we're going to submit a car. What car do you think we should purchase? Tesla, okay. Perfect. One thing I forgot to mention too, before we started, in this model, I set a budget for us of $35,000. So, but you don't know that. You don't know that when you're submitting this, your car idea, right? But I did set a budget of $35,000, so you'll see that. So we can still, let's move forward with the Tesla. What's our cost of a Tesla? $60,000. Okay. So When I, depending on what decision we're making, I scale this form to make it relevant to the criteria we want to establish or we want to collect as an organization. This one's pretty simple. So then here's our criteria we worked on together. Okay, for this Tesla, for efficiency, gas mileage, greater than 35. So we're hitting our high desirability criteria. Environmental fuel type, electric, low emissions, 0%. Doing pretty good so far. Crash rating, anybody have an idea? Let's go with 4 stars. Recalls. Just to give us some flavor, we'll say it has 3. And then specific features. Does Tesla have seatbelts, airbags, and brakes? Hopefully. If you're paying 60 grand, I hope so. Okay, so again, we left complexity and urgency off just for this model today, but you can see how those would likewise be scored. Okay, so we've got our Tesla in there now. Hopefully my team has submitted their vehicles. And when we go back, I'm going to do a refresh. Oh, yeah, they delivered. Good deal. Good job, team. Okay, so you can see these are all ideas that were submitted relative to which car they think that we should purchase. They went through and scored them based on the criteria that we all established together. So what you can see, the most important thing that we're looking at today is strategic value. So based on that scorecard we all worked on together, we all decided what was important, how it should be weighted, all of that as a team, right? So when they scored their individual cars, you can see the strategic value there, and I'll sort it with the lowest at the top. So our Tesla only scored a 73. For obvious reasons, I think. But we'll take a look at it here in a second. A Chevy Silverado is next. But right now, our Toyota RAV4 is scoring a 91. What I can do as a coach, and this is the part of the process that most organizations really like to look at. So I'm gonna just zoom in here a little bit. So this is what we like to see. So when you have all these ideas, right? If you're anything like me, I'm a visual learner. And to be able to see all of the ideas, or the cars in this case, plotted on a chart that shows those at the top are the most highest strategic value, okay? The size of the bubble means the cost. So that tells us the cost of the car that we plugged in. In particular cases, and I'll show you on my screen here in a second, complexity moves it to the right and urgency changes the color of those bubbles. But this allows us to be able to work with an organization to say, okay, these were all of your ideas, and you think your idea is better than his idea, but here's the data to tell you which one actually is best aligned with what it is that we're trying to decide. So it gives us that data, those pain points of not having that data to support. And throughout the whole process, we've included all voices throughout the process, whether it's the strategic team, the experts, and really working to drive and remove that bias so that here's the data, here's the decisions at the end of the day. I will flip back to my PowerPoint now. So a lot of times when we get done, it looks like this. So a lot of decisions, a lot of complex challenges in decision making. And at the end of the day, it's pretty straightforward what's important in our organization. We always start by picking things that are in the top left quadrant: high strategic value, low complexity. Those are kind of the low-hanging fruit, right? On top of that, you can see the high, medium, and low urgency comes out in the colors. The size of the bubble means the cost of the particular project or whatever it is that you're trying to choose. I can slice and dice the data in lots of different ways to look at it. So in this case, you'll see along the top there, the strategic alignment of the decisions we chose on the right-hand side relative to the priorities that this group set. And they had 8 of them. So this was a pretty complex model. Also budget allocation. I can see of their $17 million budget, how did the decisions or the projects they chose to move forward with break down into their budget categories relative to the priorities they set? So, at the end of the day, what we want to do is help and give organizations tools, methods. It's funny, while yes, there's a software that we use behind the scenes when we're running these, I find myself walking through these steps as I'm making life decisions, right? Am I slowing down and taking the time to think about what matters to me in this decision? What really truly matters, and which one carries more weight or less weight in when I make this decision? Do I have all the voices that I need and the perspectives that I need in order to make that decision within my organization or for personal life purposes? So as I mentioned, I love this part of my job because not only do we use it with the companies and organizations we work with, we use it ourselves for our own strategic planning, and we teach it. So we have a training program that we run that teaches people the decision sciences behind this method. The method itself isn't that complicated, but there's a lot of sciences behind why we choose to do what we choose to do in this process. And we teach through that. The other thing I like is use cases for this model are endless, essentially. In the last 6 months, these are just a few that we've worked on in particular, and I just put them up there to show you the variety. We're actually using a model like this with the state of Michigan to actually develop an energy transition project for the whole state. So big, complex, lots of organizations involved. All the way down to, we have a very unique group in Detroit that's looking to develop properties equitably. We're using this process with them to help them think through what matters in terms of equitable development. And then also privately held corporations. We use this all the time with companies that our team is working with on a regular basis. So I've talked a lot about the benefits, but the main thing at the end of the day is really just driving the process to make sure that we're being inclusive. We have all the voices heard. We are making sure that we actively remove that bias from the process in hopes that at the end in our output is the decision we made is most strategically aligned with what we all decided as a team was important to us. So with that, I think I have 1 minute left. I'm happy to take any questions here as we wrap up. I have some time to stay around if anyone has any questions about the process or anything else I've mentioned today.
By traveling different.
If a company were to work with you to implement this, do you train people to then train others?
Yep.
Is that typically how you would do it?
Yep. Yeah, typically,
Okay.
depending on the size of the organization and their staffing capacity. Sometimes it's a smaller company, they just keep bringing somebody else outside to do it, a coach in to do it for them. But we want to train people to use this. Like that's our main mission. It's educating people on this process. Okay, great. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. So we've got our next sessions here starting shortly. I think you've got a mini break. I think there might be a refresh of refreshments. So enjoy your small break and we'll see you at the next session.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
And thank you, Ashlee.